Uh, I could speak in 2 or 3 languages, like Bengali, Hindi and English together, but because of the restriction in time, I choose to speak in English, and I'm sure Kavita will arrange for translation in other languages. Because of the restriction in time, I choose to speak only English rather than Hindi and Bengali as well.
Sir, Hindi is better. Hindi is better for all. Hindi is better for all.
But then all the people from Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh and Kerala may not understand Hindi. That's it. But it will be translated. Yeah. As Devinder, old friend, has already discussed about this, the policy disruption about this food security for the nation. When you talk about the food security and the income security of the farmers being endangered, this essentially endangers the food security of the whole nation. Because all of us, from the Prime Minister and the President to all the CEOs of all multinational corporations, must eat something. And none of the foods, despite all the advancement of science and technology, has not yet been possible to get manufactured in any factory. It has to come from the trees, from biological things. Now, for this, Devinder has beautifully described the entire policy of impoverishing the farmers and destroying the food security of the farmers and income security of the farmers, and making them what we call development refugees. They become refugees as a result of the development, and the development is definitely the only creation of the object of all this kind of development that we have been seeing in this country is to create ocean of poverty and a few islands of prosperity. Just a few tiny islands of rich people and oceans of poverty, and where all these farmers be drowned. Now, in order to change that, there has been many movements, but the entire policy of the government from the even before the independence was that to create employment for the empire. At that time in the British period, it was the British Empire. Now it's the corporate empire. And the corporate empire all over the world, they actually want to impoverish the farmers so that the farming becomes a second-rate or third-rate occupation, means of occupation, so that the farmers now have learned to hate their own occupation. Farmers feel that this is a shameful occupation because it has no respect. The farmers have already lost their self-respect all over the country. And that's, as a result, most of the farmers want their children to abandon this farming as an occupation and to go to the cities to sit on this computer tables, or even serve as a sweeper in a factory. And they would say that at least my son is actually on job, a secure job in a factory, rather than being a farmer. This is the situation which the entire country's policymakers and the ministers and bureaucrats and the corporate sectors and industry are all in collusion at creating this. The only means by which the farmers had retained their sovereignty, regardless of the changes of dynasties and power. Empire after empire has gone off. As Tagore said, that over these 10,000 years, India has seen waves and waves of empires and civilizations. But the civilization, the Krishti of the country, the civilization of the farmers, Krishti is derived from Krishi. Agriculture is the mother of all cultures in all agrarian societies. And this agriculture was not destroyed, and therefore the culture was surviving all over the nation, despite these waves of empires that swept over this country. Until 1960s, when agriculture became industrialized and globalized. That was the beginning with the advent of the Green Revolution. And the Green Revolution changed everything. Today, the farmers cannot evade to exist independently of these globalized market forces, which compel these farmers to become indebted because their means of occupation, their means of subsistence, and the means and mechanics of agricultural production has become, joined to this machinery of industry. This was the major force of destruction of agriculture and agricultural security, and I'm actually talking about this sovereignty of the farmers. The sovereignty of the farmers was destroyed by destruction of the means of occupation, the materials of production. Materials of production, number one is the seeds. The seeds, from time immemorial, since 12,000 years ago, with the beginning of the agricultural revolution, when early humans learned domestication of crops. That was the beginning of agricultural revolution. From that time onwards until 1960s, that is the advent of the Green Revolution, all the seeds were the property and ownership and sovereignty rights of all the farmers all over the world. With the advent of the Green Revolution, it became the property, ownership, proprietary ownership of seed companies. That was the beginning. And today, in India, Devinda has already written about in detail about this, that all seed companies, all the seed manufacturers and sellers of the company are now owned largely by Monsanto and Syngenta. Monsanto owns every single seed company in the country, whether it's Sunseed or Mexico or Surya Seed, and you name it, in any state. Everywhere it's owned by Monsanto. Monsanto takes a share of most of this. As a result, the farmers do not own their seeds. First, it was actually snatched away by the government with the Green Revolution. All the seeds were replaced with a handful of high-yielding varieties and hybrid varieties, beginning with Daichung and IRA. Now this market is now flooded with many of these, this generation, second generation and third generations of high-yielding varieties. And now it is further replaced with genetically modified seeds and further hybrids manufactured by corporations, not necessarily by only the public-centered, IARI or CRRI or the government institutions. It's all by corporate sector. And now it's not just wheat or rice, but every imaginable crops, including banana and mustard and potato and cotton, food and non-food, all of these. So the seeds has been, the right to seeds, right to own seeds and cultivate the seeds of one's own choice has been destroyed by the corporatocracy. Once you have the seeds rights, seed sovereignty destroyed, the farmers have no option but to become slave to the corporate sector, because they are enslaved by the snares of this corporate sector. You have to buy the seeds every 2 years. If it, in the case of hybrid seeds, every year. You have to buy. If it's a Green Revolution seeds like IR36, every 2 years you have to change this new batches. And for that you have to pay money to the corporate sector. IR36 is no longer distributed by the government sectors. This is also sublet by the government to other private sectors, including sun seeds and rasid seeds and others. Alongside this, these seeds, the same seeds which are being propagated to replace all the seed sovereignty, these have to be produced with the help and with the association of other chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and so on and so forth. And then we also have to depend on the irrigation machinery, pump sets. There is always a joke that I repeat in different places. You go to a baker or a confectioner here, sweet maker in your territory. जो दही बनाते हैं, curds, they have this curd. Now this shop owner says that I am self-sufficient and sustainable in making curd, but I only have to buy milk from outside. This is the definition of sustainability that we are taught. Every single rice variety that is grown in this country by all these farmers are shipped from IRRI, International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, or other companies. All the fertilizers that they buy, the farmers buy, whether it's urea or DAP or superphosphate, come from Germany and USA. All the pesticides come from the USA and Germany. All herbicides, Monsanto Company of America. You make pumps. Earlier it was Tulu pump from Japan, Kirloskar pump from UK, and now there are Chinese pumps. Okay? So every material that we use in our agriculture are from other countries, from other companies. But our government says we are sustainable in food production, in cereal production. This is the bluff that we are trained to hear decades after decades, and just saying that no, we are not spending any money in importing rice. This is the lies and bluff that continue to feed these farmers, saying that unless you use this, you are not going to be sustainable, the country is not going to be sustainable, and people will die of starvation. I remember when I was actually coming back from US in 2001, 2002, March 22nd, and the headlines of the country was that the Indian Parliament was discussing the possibility of dumping 32,000 tons of rotten grains into the Arabian Sea. We have all learned in the childhood that America dumps their excess wheat, Netherlands dumps its excess milk in order to keep the price up. And India government was considering this same thing, 32,000 tons of wheat and rice which were rotten to be dumped into the Arabian Sea. And this was the time, remember 2002 was the year in the middle of this period when Kalahandi people were dying of starvation. And also in Madhya Pradesh it was Shivpuri, the same kind of starvation death that went on for 5 years. Nobody asked this parliamentarians a question of these 32,000 tons of wheat and rice. Did ever any of these 32 grains arrive these Kalahandi people? This was the situation. Nobody asked about this question to the government. How about the distribution? Neither this left nor the right ever raised this kind of issue of distribution, fair distribution of this the produce. They always put the blame on the farmers, that the farmers are unproductive, farmers do not produce enough food, and therefore this is the famine. And this is with this kind of voodooism, voodoo economy all over this country. We blame on the farmers that they are not enough productive. And in order to increase productivity, we invite Monsanto to institute genetic engineering in agriculture and other biotechnology, and many other things, and of course the chemistry, chemicals and all agrochemicals, and pump sets and so on and so forth. The only solution to this is to reinstate the seed sovereignty of the farmers, and the sovereignty over not just the seed, but seed is the primary one. Alongside the seed, we need the sovereign rights of the farmers to use their own traditional knowledge system of how to use the agro-ecosystems. Unfortunately, majority of the farmers in the country, that's my very sad experience over the past 20 years that I've been working with the farmers, excepting a very few pockets of tribal areas, tribal farmers, the majority of the farmers, especially the young people, have completely forgotten the different uses of biodiversity, different uses of crops, varieties. Most of the farmers don't simply know, even if you give them those traditional rice varieties, they don't know whether this variety is appropriate for upland or lowland. They don't know which crop is to be grown alongside which other crop. They don't know whether this crop should be planted before or after another type of crop. So there was a series of crop rotation knowledge, series of associate crop knowledge that is lost, and that is actually deliberately destroyed by our educational systems. The educational system that is that is actually promoted by agriculture universities. The agricultural students, they are taught with the textbooks from America, who simply don't have any knowledge of diversity. They come to India and Africa to learn about biodiversity, but these are the textbooks that are taught to our students. and therefore they actually promote all these kinds of low diversity agriculture to pump in all these agrochemicals in order to make our agriculture productive. So that's the knowledge we have to restore and reinstate among the farmers, and these are the two major pillars of sustainability and food security and sovereignty. Unless we get back all our seeds, traditional seeds, and the knowledge associated with all these kind of seeds. No, I'm not talking only rice or wheat. I mean, for rice alone, and I could take another 2 hours to describe different properties of different varieties. Of the 1,200 varieties that I am growing, each single variety has different properties which are not even, some of these are not even imagined by the genetic engineers. Okay. So, some varieties can grow in 10 feet deep water, 12 feet deep water. Some of the varieties don't need a single drop of irrigation, and we are always hearing that the irrigation is the major problem. We already have those varieties. Now these varieties are lost. Alongside this, even if the farmers are given those varieties, they don't know how to use it, where to grow them. We have to reinstate this knowledge system and reinstate our sovereignty of the farmers for the food security of the nation and themselves too. That, of course, in addition to the income security, income guarantee, that's the policy matter, and we already had this discussion that unless the farmers unless they get a proper price of the food produce that they use from the farm, this is not going to be the answer. But these are the textbooks that are taught to our students, and therefore they actually promote all these kinds of low diversity agriculture to pump in all these agrochemicals in order to make our agriculture productive. So that's the knowledge we have to restore and reinstate among the farmers, and these are the two major pillars of sustainability and food security and sovereignty. Unless we get back all our seeds, traditional seeds, and the knowledge associated with all these kind of seeds. No, I'm not talking only rice or wheat. I mean, for rice alone, and I could take another 2 hours to describe different properties of different varieties. Of the 1,200 varieties that I am growing, each single variety has different properties which are not even, some of these are not even imagined by the genetic engineers. Okay. So, some varieties can grow in 10 feet deep water, 12 feet deep water. Some of the varieties don't need a single drop of irrigation, and we are always hearing that the irrigation is the major problem. We already have those varieties. Now these varieties are lost. Alongside this, even if the farmers are given those varieties, they don't know how to use it, where to grow them. We have to reinstate this knowledge system and reinstate our sovereignty of the farmers for the food security of the nation and themselves too. That, of course, in addition to the income security, income guarantee, that's the policy matter, and we already had this discussion that unless the farmers unless they get a proper price of the food produce that they use from the farm, this is not going to be the answer. But the one thing that I want to make here, and before ending this, is that regardless of the policy of the government, whether it is genetic engineering policy or biotechnology policy or organic policy, if individual farmers themselves retain their right and sovereignty of decision making, that I take the decision of making these 10 varieties of rice or 5 varieties of millets, and these are the vegetables that I will definitely use without buying any of these seeds from the market, from the corporate sector or government. I take the decision of depending only on the farm produce for mulching and other things, without depending on any external sources for fertilizers and pesticides. And I take the decision of not taking any help either from the bank or the corporate sector or the government doles or subsidies. I can sustain myself on my own farm. No, the government will not send a military power to force the farmer to use GM crops. Therein lies our sovereignty and the right of the decision of the farmer, as long as they retain this knowledge of their traditional systems of farming and agroecology. With this, I hope that it's our task to promote. I know all of you are aware and are knowledgeable about this agroecological systems. All of you are actually practicing on your own farm. So it's not that now I'm not going to teach which part to have to be, which type of crop to be grown in which type of farms. Your task, our task, is to promulgate this knowledge to all these other farmers of the nation and empower them with this type of knowledge which they have unfortunately forgotten or made to forget, and reinstate our seed sovereignty of the nation for our own security. I hope I have not taken too long. And with this, thank you very much.